really want to mention too is the fourth shift, which is very mind driven to, we are often in a mode of learning. We want to learn and learn and learn the next, course. So we want the next new shiny object, the next retreat, or the next book, or the course, and everything, right? So
Yeah, that's
it,
me. That was me, and it's still something that I notice. It's like, oh, well, maybe I should do that, or I should do that, or there's another book I should read, and I should read that.
yeah. And
And
we often stay in that mode. We stay in it accumulates up here, right? Because when we learn all the time, it stays often in our mind and we process it that way. I mean, I have a huge bookshelf with self-help books, right? But it's the shift itself is actually to embody what we're learning,
Mhm.
becoming that. And that's a chapter in the book, how to shift that mode of learning and take all of that and embody it and become it, because that's when the true transformation happens.
How do you do that?
Welcome to Onward Live, a live stream focused on encouraging you to create a life you love living now. Let's go beyond success to significance. Being clear on our why is crucial. It requires doing the inner work, finding ourselves, getting to know ourselves, embracing our inner child, shedding social conditioning, and letting go of perfect. We know obstacles make us stronger. We can dream big and take action. Believe you can, and you're halfway there. I invite you to tune in every week and engage with me and my inspiring guests. Invite your friends. Let's make time for what matters most in our lives. Let's move onward together.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for watching tonight. I'm excited to be here, and my guest Ulrika is in the green room, and I'm going to be bringing her on in just a minute. We're going to be talking about how to live life from the heart and intuition. I've recently discovered that, pretty much most of my life I was living from my mind, my thinking brain. And since I've retired, I've discovered a whole new way of being. And it's taken quite a bit of time for me to adjust, but it's so much a better way of being. And for those of you who followed me for the past 3 years, you've probably seen the change. And I've said that the change isn't because I retired. I'm just as busy, have as much to do. The change is because I've learned to trust my heart, to listen to my intuition. I've learned to slow down and to quiet my mind and to live a completely different way that I didn't even realize was available to us. I just thought you had to kind of push through. So we're going to be talking about that tonight. I bet you Eureka had the same realization. She's a former scientist turned coach, and we both are graduates from the Institute of Professional Excellence in Coaching, IPEC. And Ulrika, welcome.
Hello, how are you, Emily? So
I'm
great to be here.
Yeah, I saw that you had posted in our IPEC, our coaching organization's Facebook group, that you had just written this book. And let me show the title of the book in the caption. It's Wisdom Beyond What You Know, How to Shift from Being Driven by the Mind to Living from the Heart and the Intuition. And I was like, oh, I got to interview her, because that's basically what I've been doing for the past 3 years, is learning that. And so welcome. Glad you're here.
Thank you so much, Emily.
So tell us a little bit about your background. Like, you were a scientist, you probably still are a scientist, but you're a scientist, but then you switched to becoming a personal coach. Tell us about that and about your background.
Yes, my background is really science and business. And I spent about 22 plus years in pharmaceutical research and development. That was my career. I started out as a scientist at the bench, and I did everything pretty much in the pharmaceutical industry at the time. Now, a few years ago, I hit rock bottom, and a lot of people do hit rock bottoms of some sort. But for me, it hit my career, because that was how I identified myself. I
Mm.
was completely, if you will, married to my job. And if somebody asked me, Ulrika, what do you do for fun? I really had no answer at the time. So that's how, in a way, disconnected from my own essence I was without realizing it. But it led me to a rock bottom. And at that time, I was given a choice. I realized in hindsight that basically the universe was orchestrating this major shift for me because I truly was ready to step into my life's work. But I didn't realize it at the time. But after that rock bottom, I'm just telling you a short story here, more in the book about it. It gave me an opportunity to make a choice. Should I go and kind of go about the way I approached life, which was very much, the go, go, go. I had a high pressure, high paid corporate job, and with travel, and all the things.
Yeah.
Or would I actually step into the unknown and go down the path of evolving, if you will, and transforming? And I did go down the path of transformation, and things started to happen.
And here you are. I
Yeah.
mean, so it started with one day somebody asking you, "What do you do for fun?" and you realizing, "I don't know." That's how it kind
No,
of
that
started.
was that was I realized that in hindsight that I really
Oh,
wasn't tapped into my own essence. What makes me me? I was fulfilling some sort of, you know, template of
yeah,
how success looks like. And how many of us can relate to that in some shape or form that, there are expectations of us. We have to have the degrees, we have to have the great jobs, the high paying jobs, and we have to do all these things, right?
right.
And what happened to me specifically was that I was let go from my job. And if you can imagine, if you identify yourself with your career, like that was the whole world fell down for me, obviously. So often these rock bottoms hits us where what matters the most to us. And for me, obviously it was the career.
Well, yeah, I interviewed a woman named Ramona a few weeks ago, and she had gotten laid off from her job, and she said that it wasn't until after that happened that she realized she thought it was a job she loved, and then she realized, well, it was producing TV shows, and she was in cold room all the time, getting sick. Had to ask somebody for permission to take a vacation. When she looked back on it, she realized, well, maybe it wasn't really my dream job, and now she's really created a life that she really loves living. And she said that one of her friends had told her, you are going to someday send your boss flowers for thanking him. She said it took 8 years, but she actually was ready at some point to thank him because it was the best thing that happened to her. So,
Yes,
yeah. How many years
absolutely.
ago was that for you?
So this must have been 2014. So it's
Okay.
quite a few years. But there was a journey also. This is, not a flip of a switch to
Right.
get to where I'm at today. But that's really was the releasing factor,
And
pivoting to a career that I have now.
And it could be different for everybody. For me, I was tired I started to realize I'm tired of this traveling and go, go, go. And so I thought I can retire at 56, my minimum retirement age. That's what I'm going to do. And life is going to be perfect. And I was still go, go, go. I didn't know how to slow down. I was busy and I was addicted to busy. I'm sure you've probably had people
Oh,
that you've
absolutely.
coached. Yeah.
Yes, yes. It was really a life where there was no space for me, like
Yeah.
truly for me in my life. And that's what we commonly kind of get into as women, we and many men too, is that we are trying to fulfill this expectation of us and to the expense of our own well-being and harmony in life.
Yeah. And you think that you're doing what you should do. You're helping out other people. You've got this well-paying job. I mean, what were the biggest challenges for you when you got laid off, and how did you switch to this career?
So for me, I had become I had taken back my yoga practice actually, just maybe a year, half a year. But I was basically led into become a yoga teacher. And I did that while I had my corporate job. But that was also a gateway to start linking my body experience with my mind, because I was so much up in my logic and my head, if
Yeah.
you can imagine.
Yeah,
That
I can.
that was the gateway, yeah, into linking the body, mind, soul, if you will, and starting that transformation. So that was one thing that happened. And synchronistically, a few years later, I was on a website, or I think it was some comment on some Facebook group that, oh, is somebody know a great coaching? There was some conversation about coaching, and somebody posted the link to the school that we both went to certify as a professional coach. And you know how things happen sometimes? It's synchronistically, I clicked on the link and there it was, right?
There it
It was
was.
this
Yeah.
inner feeling of I have to look this up further. So
Yeah.
things started to happen to me. Things were put in front of me, and then I became an energy healer a few years later in that. And yeah, so it's this opening. Once we decide, show me the unknown, show me what more is there for me, right? And if we can put ourselves out of our comfort zone,
Yeah.
that's what's starting to happen. And yeah, I'm happy.
Yeah, definitely. So Sylvia asked a question. Do you teach yoga online?
I don't teach yoga online right now, no. But the yoga practice, I have a membership where I include energy practices, yoga, as part of a bigger picture of integration, and what I teach in my book as well.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And a Facebook user says, "This is a great show. I needed to hear this tonight." Yeah, sometimes that's a synchronicity happening for you. Sometimes things happen for a reason, like this Facebook user says, and you tune into a show that's like, "Oh, I really needed to hear this tonight." And you kind of, I think what happened to you and me, Ulrika, is we kind of woke up, right? We kind of like, "Oh, I've just been like, go, 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 putting everyone else first, no time for me." And you start to realize that you start to see things happen in front of you and stuff. And you start to see that there's another way of living. And it's no accident, probably, that you and I discovered the IPEC, Institute for Professional Excellence in Coaching, because it's all about core energy coaching. Do you want to describe that?
Yeah, so core energy is really what we're made of, our
Hmm.
essence. And I think that the bottom line really of core energy coaching is that we can benefit from learning how we run energy, basically,
Yeah.
and being interested in that. And I'm just simplifying here. It's a whole concept, right? But
Right.
simply, we can learn how to align with our natural energy. And once we do that, as a result, there's less frustration, less resistance in our lives. And it's also a way that we can elevate ourselves on this ladder of energy, if you will. And it starts with identifying what goes through our mind, really. What are
Yeah.
we telling ourselves? And that's really where the beginning starts, about that curiosity, like, what is it really? What am I telling myself on a daily basis?
Right. Because a lot of times we're not aware of what we're telling ourselves. And then our thoughts lead to our feelings, which generate, our and based on those thoughts and feelings, we take action or inaction. And I really like the Energy Leadership Index assessment that you can get through an IPEC certified coach, which tells you basically, there's 7 levels of energy. 1 and 2 are lower levels and draining, and then 3 through 7 are incrementally higher levels of energy, and none of them are good or bad, and we spend time in those different energy levels throughout the day. And the thing that I like about it is recognizing when you're in those energy levels and realizing that you can actually change, or you can decide I need to be like yesterday after coming back from visiting my son and my grandson. I decided I'm just going to withdraw and be in this energy level 1, and I'm just going to chill and withdraw from social media or whatever. I just needed that time for me. So yeah, it's positive self-talk, and it's more than that though. It's recognizing, like, I used to think that energy level, what we talk about in our coaching is energy level 3, that energy level 3 was good energy. It's like, and it is good energy, but I didn't realize there's another way, even, other higher levels of energy that you can choose to be in. Because I spent most of my life in energy level 3, which is finding the silver lining, pushing forward, making the best of it. And there's other ways of being. But I think that in energy level 3, you're not paying attention to your heart and intuition as much. Did I get that right?
Absolutely. And
Do you want to expand on that?
yes, and also if we go up in the energy levels, and this is just an imaginary kind of ladder, but it has to do with also how we perceive our environment and relationships and our interactions with others. And often when we go up that ladder, we have, for example, more that sense of a win-win interaction with somebody, instead of he or she said this and I'm upset about it, and the back and forth. Higher energy levels comes with the feeling of togetherness, if you
Yeah.
will. Even if there is a difference between opinions, for example, there can always come out a good outcome of an interaction. And that's with that perception and with that way of approaching things, we come out with an energy of collaboration or co-creation in a much different way than if we're kind of he and she is
Right.
this and I need this, but he and she can't give it to me, or that difference of quality in the lower levels of energy, good and bad, right and wrong, that in a way disappears, or not disappears, but it becomes different
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
higher energy levels.
I think at the higher energy levels, well, I know external circumstances don't impact you as much, don't
Yeah,
impact your inner peace.
correct.
That's how
Yeah.
I experience it. But sometimes they're more challenging external
Mhm.
circumstances, and it takes practice. Like, I'm pretty much there with not the huge challenges in my life. When there's a huge challenge and stuff, I can go down, it's not as intuitive for me to get back. I sometimes I have a coach that helps me, like, okay, what's another way of looking at this? I know there is one, but I can't see it right now. And I think that's why it helps to have a coach. I always tell people, if you're going to invest in a coach who's got a coach themselves, right? Because I think it's helpful for us. But sometimes with quote unquote big challenges, it can be harder to be objective, and it just takes practice. You've been doing it a lot more longer than me. You started IPEC when, in 2014?
It was a few years later,
A few years later.
I graduated in 2018, I believe. So that,
Okay.
yeah.
So tell us about your book that you just published, right? And people
Yeah.
can get it on your website, which I'll post in a minute, which is just your first and last name.com. But Wisdom Beyond What You Know: How to Shift from Being Driven by the Mind to Living from the Heart and Intuition. What inspired you to write this book? Tell us, about the writing process, and, just all of it. I want to hear about it.
Yes, I'm so excited to talk about this because it's a very practical, I call it spiritual self-help book. And many, books like this comes with a big theory or some idea, but mm, what I put in this book is actually coaching exercises as well that are opening you up to actually embody what is taught in the book. And what inspired me to write the book was really, again, what I teach others is to trust your intuition. And it basically came to me that I've always loved books, but to see myself as an author, that's takes a bit. But I felt I was ready to write this book because part of it is also my own stories, but also it's my own analysis of how we, for example, the first part is about mind driven ways of being, which could where I outline some of the very common patterns that we all have identified ourselves with, such as people pleasing,
Mhm.
such as ignoring our own needs and working hard for success, for example, is one chapter. So it outlines in the beginning some of the opportunities to identify yourself with what goes on in your own life. Because for so long, we have been following this template or being taught how success looks like.
Yeah.
Then the second part of the book is focused on giving you the fundamentals of heart centered living. And we've talked a lot about energy, and energy awareness is one of the components of heart centered living. In addition to creativity,
Mhm.
inspiration, connecting with nature, for example, and things like that. So a couple of chapters in giving you those fundamentals. And a lot of the things that I bring up there is people are aware of, but they don't do it. They don't
Right.
step into. I mean, how many times a day do you connect with a tree, or how
Right.
many times a day are you thinking of how am I in my essence, in my creativity right now? And how inspired am I right now? And many people say, I know about all these things, but I don't really, what am I doing with it? Can I do something with it? So that's what I wanted to put in the book, just to give kind of what is this heart centered living all about. Now, the third part of the book is really 7 inner shifts that will take you into, from all the mind driven world we're living in into our heart and intuition. And it it gives you a practical analysis and my stories as well, and exercises on how to integrate this. And the first shift, for example, is getting out of our comfort zone and shifting into a commitment to ourselves and our transformation.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
without that, like nothing's gonna be different in our lives. And it goes into these 7 shifts, which are, yeah, exciting to talk about.
Yeah, well, and we will talk about him. I had a guest last week, and I asked, well, how does someone do this? And the thing he said is, first, it's a decision. It's a
Yeah.
decision. It's a decision to leave your comfort zone. I mean, I don't. You became a coach after being a scientist for so long. That's what you knew. When I retired from working for the Navy, everyone was telling me what I should do. The next logical step, which would be to go be a government contracting consultant. And I noticed that made that I didn't really get energy, but I noticed that made me go, ugh. And what I'm doing now makes me go, yes.
Yeah,
And so
exactly.
that's a way of paying attention to your heart and your intuition. Like when you think of going to work or some of the things that you do throughout the day, it's hard sometimes. It can be if you're just really busy, go, 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 push, push, push. But paying attention. One of my coaches says, notice what you're noticing. Notice your longings and discontent. Like how notice how you're feeling. Notice what gives you energy and what makes you go, oh, I just don't want to do that. And then, yeah, I could have made a lot of money probably being a government consultant. But I left my comfort zone, became a podcast host, and became a coach. And life is so much better this way.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah, and one thing that I also place a lot of value in is how we have the opportunity to tap into parts of ourselves that we haven't used in our previous career. Like for me, I had rarely tapped into my body's wisdom
Mhm.
because, here I was, had no idea what I do for fun. I just like
Mhm.
work, 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 and here's what I'm doing. But when we tap into our body's wisdom that is already, our gifts and talents that we're given, we all are good at something naturally without having to go a course or without having to have a degree to
Right.
do it, right? And that's what we want to call back and enrich our current lives with. And if we don't slow down and allow that process of finding out what our natural talents and gifts are, yeah, nothing's going to change, right?
Did you have trouble slowing down to do that? How
Oh,
did you do
yes.
it? How did you do it?
So it started with a commitment to myself because
Mhm.
I had actually learned, for example, to meditate as a teenager, but it was mostly for, handling stress at school or in work and all of that. That's how it was presented to me back then. But I did pick it up, meditation practice I had. And I also had learned before kids I went to yoga classes and things like that. And I felt great. But then I got so busy at work, so I put the yoga aside, but I picked that back up. And once I got into this point of no return feeling like this is the direction I'm going, I made a commitment to myself to slow down and pick the meditation up, pick the yoga up, and create space in my life for that. And that was the turning point, opening myself up to start discovering myself, my true essence back again.
Was it hard for you to sit quietly and meditate?
Yes, yes. And I want to say also for anyone who's tried meditation and think it's not for me, it can be for you because there's a
Mhm.
lot of myths of meditation out there that it needs to be like you have to have an empty mind. Like who has an empty mind? Nobody. So there is this time. Meditation can look and feel different for everyone. But the essence of it, the point is to spend time with yourself and your soul and hear what's going on. And yes, it was very difficult for me to change this, but it started with me changing my mornings, doing it
Mhm.
in a realistic way because often we have these big plans, right? Oh, it's going to be so wonderful and
Yeah.
it's going to happen in 2 weeks time, right?
Yeah, and
But no,
I'll be meditating for an hour every
yeah.
morning. I've got time.
So
Yeah.
that's not going to work, right? And that's part of what I help others with now too, to help others to feel that the changes that they want to make in their lives feels realistic. It gives practical, realistic, grounded results
Mhm.
instead of some lofty goals that maybe in 3 years I can't know. It's to break down to something that you actually love doing and that you want to do the next day.
Yeah.
Usually we don't stop until like, I love this practice. I love it. I want to go back to it, right?
Right.
That's what we're looking for
Right.
because so many people are going to the gym, for example, and hate it.
And hate it. Yeah.
And no, I love to watch my clients really like, "Oh, I can't wait to go back to my practice tomorrow." And it's like that's the gold.
Yeah, that's awesome. And when you say sitting by yourself, I know you don't mean, but I just want to clarify it. I'm pretty sure you don't mean like watching a good movie on Netflix.
No, no, this is when I say that it's so important to spend time with yourself and your soul, it is quiet time with yourself, whether it's out in nature, in a place that you love spending or
Mhm.
maybe have missed spending time in, whether it's in a room that you have that you love, or if you don't have a room that you love, making the commitment to make a little corner in a room that you love with your things that makes you feel good. Yeah, so it is really to sit and contemplate, which is something that we rarely do. And
Yeah.
we often do it like late at night when everything else is done. But then we don't have the, so it is that, okay, I'm going to prioritize my own time, and it's going to be high up on the priority list in my
Yeah.
day. And that's what changed it radically for me too.
And then if you mess up, miss a day, whatever, don't beat
Yeah.
yourself up. Just
No,
go
no,
right back into it.
no. Just kind of, there's a day tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we are way
So,
too hard on ourselves sometimes too. And yeah, the softer approach is more of a welcoming approach too. So we can all use that. Hmm.
yeah, definitely. You had mentioned the 7 inner shifts, and I don't know if you want to cover them all. I know you want people to read the book, but you could highlight a couple things.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, I can do the short version, and I
okay.
know there are some really good ones in here that you may appreciate too. And as I mentioned, the first shift is really to get out of your comfort zone into making a commitment to yourself. And that's, without that, nothing's gonna be different, right? And the second shift, then we go to, from feeling disconnected from yourself to getting curious and increase your self-awareness about yourself. And that's not about like what you do or what friends you have. It is to learn about how you actually are running energy. For example, each of us have a unique energy imprint
Yeah.
that drives how we approach our lives, and we can learn about that.
Sorry, I
But
was sneezing. I
self-awareness.
hung out with my 5-year-old grandson.
Bless you.
I hung out with my 5-year-old grandson, and he had a cold, and I
You
got it
got it. Yeah.
over Easter. Yeah.
But I
Okay,
can't
keep
I
going.
can't yeah, I'll continue. I can't emphasize enough how important it is to gain self-awareness. And that's also what a coach is trained to help you navigate, going to those places where you actually can learn about yourself,
Yeah.
how you are approaching life now, and how you may want to evolve, what you want to evolve into. So, and of course, it's not a flip of a switch, right? It's
No.
involves a lot of curiosity in that process.
Yeah. And that's, a coach doesn't tell you what to do or what to think, but a coach might ask an empowering question or ask, is there another way of looking at this? Things
Mhm.
like that, helping you realize, because so many times we just get, like, one of the comments down here was, let me see, let me pull that up. Yeah, it is. It's harder to see through the challenges when you're in the midst of them, especially when there are really hard things going on. Yeah, and just having
Absolutely.
another opinion or asking a question that makes you go, "Oh, I didn't even think of it that way." And so when we're under stress and we're only seeing things a certain way, a coach can help us, stop and calm down a little bit. And, like, one of the things we learn in IPEC is, stress is like a finger in your ribs. If you're explaining something that you really love and you talk all about it, then try to explain it with the finger in your ribs. It's distracting, it hurts. And that's what stress does. And so when you're under stress like that and you're go, 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 you can't really just see other options that are
Mhm.
right in front of you, right?
Yes, very much so. To a challenge may look like a challenge, but there might be an opportunity in there too. And it is to find that nugget,
Yeah.
because there's always additional energy in that challenge that can be turned around.
Yeah.
Now, another shift that is in the book is also to shift from being codependent on either people or situations into becoming sovereign.
Mhm.
And that's a too, because so many times we feel stuck because we are attached to our past or people that we're around. We are just not feeling sovereign as an empowered individual. And that's where the patterns and the habits come into play, and becoming aware of those patterns and habits. And we can release that energy of being codependent, and we
Yeah.
might watch others in our immediate families that are like, you can so see the codependency between two people.
Right.
But we all are codependent in some
Right.
shape or form to either situations or people. But part of this is to really step into your own power. And
Yeah.
that's an important, and becoming whole.
I think that that's really challenging for me right now in with my adult children, because sometimes some decisions that they might be making, I'm like, I don't know. And yeah, letting go of your adult children,
Mhm.
letting go of the patterns is something that I'm working on now that I'm aware of. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's what's happening. And that happened, 10 years ago too. And I can see other times when it happened. So I want to stop that pattern.
Yeah. So it really is to become self-aware about it first, but then releasing that either behavior or energy that is attaching us to situations or people. And
Yeah.
it's so important to put ourselves at the top of the mountain of our own lives.
But for women, so that can feel selfish, right? Like, I'm the mother, I'm supposed to do this, this, and this, or I'm the boss, I'm supposed to do this, this, and this. But yeah. Can you give some examples that help drive some of your points home, like about the codependency or, some of the other 7 inner shifts, maybe from your life or others
Yeah,
that
I
you know?
think if we hone in on the codependency part, is identify relationships that you have currently that makes you feel restricted or contracted in some form. And it
Mhm.
sometimes it takes, how do I feel after I interact with this person?
It takes
And
paying attention to that.
it
Notice what you're
takes, yeah,
noticing. Yeah.
if you're kind of feeling stressed or restricted in some form after having interacted with somebody, that means that you are compromising some part of yourself. You're feeling that frustration or the resistance. So there's an opportunity to release that.
Right. Know what your thoughts are.
Yeah.
And sometimes our thoughts, we think that that's the only way to look at this situation.
Yes, and
And
often it comes through relationships that we've had for a long time,
yeah.
and immediate family comes to mind, right? But
Hmm.
there is definite opportunity to release codependent patterns,
Right.
no doubt about it. Now, one thing I really want to mention too is the fourth shift, which is very mind driven. We are often in a mode of learning. We want to learn and learn and learn the next, course. So we want the next new shiny object, the next retreat, or the next book, or the course, and everything, right? So
Yeah. That's
it,
me. That was me. It's still something that I notice. It's like, oh, well, maybe I should do that, or I should do that, or there's another book I should read, and I should read that.
yeah, and
And
we often stay in that mode. We stay,
Mhm.
and it accumulates up here, right? Because when we learn all the time, it stays often in our mind, and we process it that way. I mean, I have a huge bookshelf with self-help books, right? But it's the shift itself is actually to embody what we're learning,
Mhm.
becoming that. And that's a chapter in the book, how to shift that mode of learning and take all of that and embody it and become it, because that's when the true transformation happens.
How do you do that?
So it means that we have to, see our pattern first in the learning. Kind of, we want the new shiny object all the
Hmm.
time, and step back and again slow down. What is it that I've learned? How am I going to integrate that in my everyday? So
Hmm.
it's a process of being very conscious. And of course, we choose what of everything that we've learned do we want to bring into our new life?
Right.
Is it to be more creative on a daily basis? I mean, we read in a book, it's great to be creative every day, but what do we do with it?
Right. Right.
So that means that, for example, in that simple example, how am I going to ensure that I am lighting up that creative spark every day? And that could look different for everyone, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that takes that little learning experience, like what works for me is the question that most people are not asking ourselves, because we want to find the quick answer in a book or take the next course that tells us what to do. But this is different. It's to come up with the answer ourselves. Like, what is it that lights me up? When am I feeling the most creative in my life? And that's what we expand on. And we have to come up with that answer ourselves.
Yeah.
So books and, courses or inspirational leaders, influencers can be awesome. But the question, like, is this really for me? That is the question that often forget to ask ourselves.
Yeah, that's a really good point. We just add it to our should list,
Yeah.
our list of things that we should be doing and feel bad that we haven't done all
Mhm.
of these things in addition to everything else we're supposed to do during the day. I can't remember the name of the book, but it was about how I think especially women are always learning, never feeling like they're ready for that promotion or never feeling like they're good enough. They have to learn one more thing and study up on one more thing and read another self-help book when really we do have what we need
Yes,
right in
yes,
here.
absolutely, and that's when we turn, which is the next shift, when we turn our logic into wisdom.
Hmm.
And that's really when we start to tap into that wisdom that we already have. We don't need to take another course. We
Yeah.
don't have to get that degree for it. It's something that we have been bringing with us, sometimes through lifetimes. And
Hmm.
that's what I personally have tapped into now as I've done the work I have in terms of tapping into more of my intuition. That's part of what I was really good at in the past.
Okay.
Because it came naturally to me. I didn't have to kind of go a course in being an intuitive. It just opened up. And that might be something else for somebody else, a talent or skill that you just kind of feel natural with from the start. And I've come across things like that in my life now that, huh, how did I learn that? I don't know. I'm just doing it. And
Right.
that's what we want, right? We want to bring back those hidden treasures within ourselves because we all have them. We all have what's unique about ourselves.
Yeah, we do. And then and that's important to not compare and say, well, look what she can do and I can't do that. I'm not good enough. You can do something that that person can't do. Everyone has their own unique gift, and that's the awesome part of this slowing down and listening to your heart and your intuition
Yeah.
and discovering that about yourself instead of focusing on everybody else and what they have. Start to get to know yourself and what you have.
Mm. Yeah, and now we're getting into the good stuff because you know, the shift number 6, we're almost at the end here.
Hmm.
Number
It's
6
fine. Yeah.
is, the pattern or the shift from going from, as we've talked about this whole show, around being the pusher, so to say, I'm gonna go get. I
Hmm.
am going to, because I can see the outcome, I'm going to get it and have a plan. And we know that we want a plan 1 to 10. Here's the first step and the next step and so on. Taking that to go into what I call to manifest,
Hmm.
which is more the energy of allowing
Hmm.
and seeing and noticing those synchronicities that leads us down a path of what is our true self. Because what I've learned is that if I listen to and notice these signs that come in front of me, such as being led down to become a professional coach,
Hmm.
that will never lead us down the wrong path. Because in our world of pushing and, I'm going to go get that, it's got to have to look this way for it to be for me. It has this duality about it. Is it right? Is it wrong? Am I lots of self-doubt in that space. But in the space of and in the energy of manifesting, there is no right and wrong. There it just is.
Right.
And that's kind of when we're getting into the ease and flow in life. When we shift from pushing ourselves through life to manifesting.
Yeah. Can you give an example of how that worked in your life?
Oh, I have so many examples. I mean, just as an example of what we talked about, any of my business decisions that I'm making currently, whether it's I am going to write a book or invest in something that would enhance my business, for example, I go completely by signs and synchronicities and signs and how I feel. It's not whether it's recommended by somebody or whether it's, I look at somebody who's had tremendous success with it. No, I completely go by how did this come into my, sphere? How did this come into my energy? And if it's coming in through what I call a synchronicity, we know that is when when the universe aligns, right, with
Right.
our own path. That's how I make decisions today.
You don't pull
And
out the data?
I don't I don't pull out the data as much. I don't lead with the research. I don't lead with the pros and cons. I don't lead with, is this going to look good? I lead with, does this feel good? Does this make me feel good? And how did
Yeah.
this come into my attention? That's how I know if something is right for me today.
I love that. I remember 3 years ago when I retired, I was walking in a park with a friend of mine, and she was a big I knew one of the things that I knew I wasn't doing I knew I wasn't feeling my feelings. I couldn't name my feelings, like happy, sad, mad, whatever, but not really name my feelings. I didn't know. And I think there's a lot of people like that. And she would say, what do you feel about, she'd ask, what do you feel about something? I'm like, I don't know what I feel about it. I know what I think about it. And so I've really been working with coaches and with my journaling and with myself. I have this little cheat sheet of all the feelings too, is how I started so I could start to name what I'm feeling, because that's so important for, I think, leading a purpose-driven life, right? And for creating a life that you really love living is knowing what we're feeling and knowing our thoughts and how that's contributing to our feelings, because our subconscious mind, doesn't it goes by our feelings a lot, right? You could probably explain that more than me, but
Yeah, our emotions are really can be
energy
quite,
in motion.
yeah, emotions are great. However, it's in that still space of our true self that we know what's right and wrong for us. It's not in the emotional wave. Because
Yeah.
and this is what I was alluding to before. We all have a different energy makeup. Some people have this emotional wave that we have to wait out to make the right decision. Some people have an energy of that can make decisions in an instant. And it's important to know how your energy works that way. Because if we go by emotion, because I'm emotionally, my decision making is emotional, and I know that I cannot make a decision in an instant. I have to ride out the emotional wave, become neutral, and then make the decision, because
Yeah.
otherwise I can be at an emotional high, and it's just because I'm so excited about it, right? And it might not be the right thing for me, but each person has the opportunity to learn how you work that way.
Yeah.
And if you're somebody who can make decisions in an instant, you know that. You can trust that. And it's all about increasing that trust in your own reaction through your body. Because
Yeah.
the mind wants to make up all these strategies, options like this or that, or da, 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 all the self-doubt that comes to that. So instead, we can learn how to listen to our true self and yeah, trust that decisions are right for us.
Yeah. Do you journal? Is that something that
Oh,
you recommend?
absolutely.
Mhm.
Yes. This is
Mhm.
this is one of the practices. I teach intuitive journaling, which is very different from, keeping a diary or so. Intuitive journaling is how you have a stream of consciousness basically that comes down on a page, and it comes with letting go of, how things look, how what's on the page, anything, right? But it takes a commitment to let your mind and soul come down on a piece of paper. I've done it for many years. I teach it to every client I have because that you can learn so much about yourself through intuitive journaling. So yes, on your question, absolutely, it's an essential tool.
So you have them sit down and just write whatever comes up for like what a certain number of pages or
So I I often recommend to have excuse me, a journal available after meditation and really put the pen to paper and not set a timer. If you want to have a timer, at least 5 minutes, and just let it go and write whatever comes up
Mhm.
without editing.
Right.
And but in conjunction with meditation is the most powerful I've found. And I now channel basically that way. In part, that's how I wrote the book.
Wow. So explain channeling.
Yeah, we're getting into the good stuff. Yeah, channeling, everyone can channel. And I'm 100% sure of that. And it's when we can let go of our mind and be completely tapped into our soul, tapped into our true self, and our spirit guides who are also there to help. And I channel my spirit guides as well, and I can have a conversation with them, and my mind is completely out of the way in those situations, and everyone can learn that. But it often starts with allowing yourself to kind of loosen the grip on your own boundaries a little bit and loosen the grip on your expectations, first of all, because I found that's the key, that we have to be very kind to ourselves and not get in there with the judgmental inner critic or mind in everything we do. And when we can learn that through intuitive journaling, we can learn that in daily life as well.
Hmm. And not trying to just make it happen, right? The way we think
Yeah.
it should happen,
So, for
but
example, when I
allowing.
wrote my book, I did a lot of free writing and without a structure to begin with. And that's how most of the essential content came down. And of course, at some point I had to kind of, okay, we need a structure to this. But in the beginning phase, I really had a free flowing session with myself often to bring the essential content down. Yeah.
So, what are a few things that you've learned about yourself since you stopped being a scientist and started being a coach and an intuitive and everything? What have you learned?
I've I've learned about myself that I'm a very old soul. And most of us are that are here now, including everyone that's listening. We have so much knowledge, wisdom within ourselves that we have just no idea what we can do. And I think that's with the insight in the seventh shift. We get to the seventh shift here is that when we shift from being seeing ourselves as individuals like I'm here, you are there, and start to become multidimensional in the sense that we share energy with our environment, with everyone around us. And that is really what I've learned about myself, how that I am an important part of what goes on this earth right now. And I'm not over here and you're over there. We're all together. And especially when we learn about energy, that becomes very evident.
Yeah.
So I think bottom line is I've learned that I'm so much more than just the box I put myself in before.
Oh, I love that. We got a question here from a guest. Do you think you might be channeling your inner self?
Absolutely, yes. Because our inner self, true self, whatever you want to call it, when we do that, I'm a firm believer that our heart energy is really our most powerful energy. And it is connected to what I just talked about, the multidimensional aspects of ourselves, which are connected to the universe, like everything around us. So it's a yes to your question. I
Yeah.
am channeling my inner self uh, because that's the most purest part of ourselves, right? When we have removed all the filters
Mhm.
of assumptions and past happenings, traumas, things like that. When we are lifting the veil behind all of that, we are a pure soul, and that's everyone can connect with that and feel your inner power, basically life force, whatever we want to call it.
Mhm. If we connect with that, we wouldn't be insecure. We'd be like
Right.
powerful, right?
Enormously powerful, yes.
Yeah.
And I've felt that unconditional love in channeling with my higher self, my guides, and like that feeling of being part of everything. And that is what we're made of, and that's where we can create. Like it's very much the same feelings that we have when we're at our most creative state.
In flow.
And about that connection between the more we can tap into our creativity, the more we open the door to our inner self or true self or the universe, whatever we want to call it.
Yeah. Well, let's wrap this up. And I want to just put here your book again, in case people want to order it. Wisdom Beyond What You Know, How to Shift from Being Driven by the Mind to Living from the Heart and Intuition. And you can get it from your website, ulrikasullivan.com. And you also, which we didn't get to talk about, we'll have to have you back again at some point. You also have a podcast, and you can get to that podcast from your website. It's New Light Living Podcast. See yourself in a new light. I love that. Thank you so much.
This was awesome, Emily. Thank you so much for this beautiful conversation. I loved it.
I learned something from every single one of my guests, coming up on 3 years of podcasting. So if I'm going to have a 3-year celebration on May 25th, and I think it's going to be also the 200th episode. It's kind of weird. The 200th episode on that Wednesday, May 25th, and 3 years. And that takes something to stick with doing a show like this for 3 years. You probably know that too.
Amazing. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, there's times you're like, oh, it can get a little challenging, but I just love it. I can't give it up. I just love it. I love talking with my guests and learning. And I appreciate everybody who tunes in and it joins us in the chat. So thank you, everybody who joined in the conversation. For some people that were on Facebook, it showed up as Facebook user. So I'm not really sure who that is until I get on Facebook. And they could even be people on your channel too, Ulrika. You could go and look where you're streaming it as well. So thank you, everybody, for watching tonight, for engaging in the conversation, for learning with us. I appreciate all of you. And I hope to see you next week as well.
Onward Live is sponsored by Emily Harmon Coaching and Consulting. Visit my website, emilyharmon.com, to learn more about me and my coaching programs. I'd love to help you create a life you love living. Remember, every adversity is our own personal university. Sometimes the lessons are difficult, and we must learn from our experiences. Vulnerability is your superpower. You are lovable and worthy. And we discuss these topics and more because professional is personal. Thank you for joining us and engaging with me and my guest. I look forward to seeing you next time.